Hi, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Cool People, Big Ideas. And I'm really excited to share this conversation with you today. I sat down with my friend Will McGough, who is a travel writer and an author and a tour guide. His book is Swim, Bike, Bonk, which is just such a fabulous title. And I met Will about 11 years ago now when we were both pursuing our trades down in Portillo, a beautiful ski resort in Chile in South America. He was writing, I was teaching energy medicine yoga. And flash forward now, we got a chance to reconnect and talk about the travel writing industry, the ski industry, what inspires him, and what scares him a little bit about the world that we're in right now and how he relates to it through his work, through his writing, through his insatiable curiosity about the world, and a way to bring that world to you in a really conscious way. I think you're going to really enjoy this. It's powerful, it's intense, and it's also a lot of fun. So sit back, relax, and enjoy my conversation with Will. Hi, Will McGough. I cannot believe I'm sitting here with you again after so long. It's so great to see you.
It's great to see you too. What's it been? 11 years?
I think it's
More than
been
a decade.
more than a decade. So I'm just going to set the stage for everybody. The last time, well, let's see. The first time I saw you was walking in to the dining room at Portillo Ski Resort in Chile, South America. And we were seated together at the same table. And I'll tell everyone why in a moment. But that was the first moment that I met you. Do you remember that?
I do remember, yeah. I remember sitting in that restaurant, beautiful view looking out over the slopes. And if I remember correctly, it was because it was kind of a cruise ship itinerary in the sense where you all sit together the same night or
Yes.
the same table every night.
Yeah, that's right. And there were two other guys at that table too. I remember them, but I'm not sure I could pull their names out. Although I have some emails, if I really dug, I could find them. But you, I remember specifically, you and I were both there doing some kind of travel work, travel writing. You were doing, I was doing some writing as well as teaching energy medicine yoga. And so we were at the same table with our handler who was kind of making sure that we knew where to go and what to do and had all the information that we needed for that week, right? Do you remember her?
That's I do remember her, yeah. I think she lived in Colorado as well, in Aspen, if I remember correctly. I'm now based in Western Colorado.
Okay.
I was an editor with the Condé Nast publication at the time, so I was there for a travel writing assignment to cover skiing in the summer, if you will, because the seasons are reversed. So I believe we were down there in late July, early August. So yeah, I was there for an assignment. That's how I met you, and you were teaching yoga, correct?
That's right. That's right. I was teaching yoga and we got to have basically because you said it's the cruise ship thing, so we got to have all our meals together and we just got to know each other and then that was it. Poof. And we go out into the world again and now circle back. We're 11 years later and I'm going back to Portillo to teach energy medicine yoga again, which I still teach. At that point, I had written one book. Now I've written 3 books on energy medicine yoga. And it just so happened serendipitously or big brother, big sister, listening to my conversations. And I saw your feed come through on Facebook and an article that you had just written and just published. It happened to be about St. Pete. And my business partner lives in Florida part-time. And I know she lives sort of near St. Pete. So I read it. Otherwise, I probably, I don't go to Florida. I wouldn't. But then I saw it was your name. And I was like, oh, I need to reach out to Will and see what you've been doing all this time. And it looks like you've been doing some pretty amazing things. Do you want to just kind of wind us back? I want to talk about skiing. We're going to talk a lot about skiing. But I want to so you were writing for Condé Nast, and now flash forward, you have a book out and you're writing all over the place. Tell us your kind of steps from that. Was that the start of your travel writing career?
Great question. I started in 2010, actually. So I went to school for journalism, and it's a much longer story. I don't know if you want it, but when I came out of grad school after studying journalism for 2 years, I wanted nothing to do with the profession of journalism. I dedicated my grad school thesis on how journalists cover tragedy. And if anybody watches the news today, you may kind of get a sense of how I was feeling, just always dealing with the worst of the worst, always super sensationalized, and always walking away from the day just feeling like a little cynical, I guess, about the world. So I took a year off and then slowly got into travel writing in 2010, and I became a freelancer at that time. And back then, freelancer was just a fancy word for unemployed, but it was a good thing to say to my parents so they didn't think that I was just loafing in my California days at the time. Slowly but surely worked into it and have been a freelance writer in the travel and outdoor spectrum ever since 2010. One of the great things about being a freelancer is that it allows you to really personalize your work. So I can be very selective about what I do and which projects I take on, including the book project you mentioned or writing for different publications. At that time, when I went to Portillo, I had an assistant editor position with a Condé Nast website. So I was contracted, but still freelance. And I remember that trip so well because I'm a super big skier, now living in Colorado, grew up doing it. And that's still the only place in the world I've been skiing where each night you have this reserved table where you sit with the same people and even people that you didn't travel with necessarily. So I believe there were a couple other solo travelers at our table. I don't know about you. You live in Montana now, so you ski a lot. I've never been to a place like Portillo where it's that kind of setup. And it was really nice because as a solo ski traveler, the days are great because skiing by yourself is sometimes fantastic, at least for me. I really enjoy that freedom. But at night, it can be a little slower. So the vibe there was cool because we all got to hang out every night and we ended up skiing together, of course, because we all became friends. Have you ever been anywhere like that?
I have not. I have not. Like it really is remarkable. And I do remember going there because I was also traveling alone. And I thought, I same thing. I love skiing alone. It's kind of my favorite thing to do. And I don't do it so much anymore because I'm married now and I ski a lot with my husband, which I also like. But I anytime that I can get away and go ski by myself, that's sort of my preferred mode. But then I agree with you. At night, you're sort of like, what am I doing now? And at Portillo, it's built in. And I mean, we were lucky. I guess what would have happened if we had sat at a table with people that we didn't really jive with, and then we're there. You're at that table. You can't switch tables. You're at that table for the week. So we were lucky that we all really got along.
I would imagine if I was sitting with people I didn't enjoy, I probably would have drank less, which may have been a good thing, and probably just gone back to my room and read, woken up feeling fresh. But yeah, we were lucky in that regard. I remember it being very isolating in the sense that once you arrive at Portillo, it's not like other ski resorts where you're in a town and you have access to go all different places. Pretty much anybody staying at the mountain is right there. Same restaurant, same walkways, same area. So it does really foster the community well of travelers. I enjoyed that. You'll have to let me know after you go again what it's like now, if it's changed at all.
Yeah, yeah, I absolutely will. And I think maybe we'll talk about some other ski stuff now because it is a unique experience to be able to ski what's for us off season, right? It's our North American summer and going down and, getting powder days in August is like the dream come true. Um, and it's a unique ski area in the fact that it really is in the middle of nowhere. There's very few day users, although they do sell day tickets, but not a lot of people. That road is, I mean, I think it's like 27 switchbacks or something. It's not easy to get to. And so it's really if you're there and you're skiing. And unfortunately, when we were there, it wasn't a great snow year. But if you're there, can you imagine being there on an epic powder day and there's only 450 other people skiing? I mean, that is just I'm dreaming of that this year. I hope I get that experience. Um, but one of the things that's so interesting is it is still owned by a family, right? The same family that's owned it for many years. And the move in the ski industry is bigger, 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 bigger. And I just listened to a podcast that you did on your podcast called Wake and Wander. And you interviewed the owner of Lost Trail Ski Area in Montana, which is a small family owned ski resort. And you asked him, this was a fascinating question and answer. You asked him, I think it was a softball question. You sort of thought you knew the answer. And you said, Vail and the other, I forget the other, it begins with an A, you'll probably know, the big conglomerate that's, sucking up small ski areas and buying them. And and you probably don't want that to happen to your ski area. And you ski at a small area. I ski at an independently owned ski area. Our biggest nightmare is Vail coming in and buying us. Like that is a horrifying proposition. And I felt like you were leading him to that question. And he surprised you, surprised me. He said, I would love to be bought by Vail. Talk through how that felt for you to hear that.
Super surprising. As you said, I really try and be neutral as a journalist, but when you get into these podcast conversations, you get so comfortable. You start to feel like you know the person. And because we run in small circles or similar circles where, same thing in Colorado, it's everybody's worst nightmare for their local ski resort to get bought out. So when you're dealing with an independent ski owner, and he had previously said, if you remember in that conversation, that it was very important to stay independent. In fact, I look back on that interview and sometimes wish I would have pushed back a little even harder because he contradicted himself. But then he launches into this idea about how he'd love to be bought out. And to his credit, he went on to make some pretty good points. Mm-hmm. From a ski owner's perspective, you have to understand why they would. A lot of the finance and the financial trouble they get into is replacing all the infrastructure on the mountain, the maintenance on the lifts, getting all the things in order on the mountain so it works for the guest. And that's so much easier, as he pointed out, if you have a corporation behind you with a lot of money that instead of replacing all the lifts over a 10, 15-year period, they just come in and wipe that all out right away. I was shocked by it, and he seemed shocked by the fact that I was shocked. He asked me, I remember specifically, who doesn't want to ski at a nice resort with all these nice amenities and hotels and bars and restaurant? And I simply said, well, I think a lot of people. I know a lot of people that would not want to go to those places. I know a lot of my friends and I, we don't go to Vail that often. It's very expensive for one, but it's just a to-do. I can go to my local mountain here in Colorado, be at the door in 40 minutes, and walk up to the lift. There's no line. Even weekends aren't bad. There's no hustle bustle. There's no one there that doesn't want to ski and isn't there for the mountain. But you get into these mega resorts, and they're trying to be actually, I think, destinations that people can go to as families, as units. So it's less about the skiing. It's more about trying to diversify your area so you can attract different people. Whether that's right or wrong, it just depends on who you are. For me, I'd like to see both. I think both serve a great purpose. You have your Vails of the world, the big sky in Montana. I'm sure you've skied there. It's incredible. The size of the mountain they're able to produce, the infrastructure to get you to these places in a reasonable amount of time. And you can ski all day and ski this whole area till your legs fall off if you want. That's not always the case at local mountains. You can ski a half day at some local mountains and say, okay, I get the idea of it. But the vibe's different. The crowd's different. It's hard for me to say which is right, but I appreciate you calling it out. That was such an important conversation for me because being the little ski bum I am, I always picture, okay, big corporation's bad. But he was able to point out some justifications for that. I'm not sure what the future of that place is. I don't know how it made you feel as a Montana resident to hear that, to hear a small independent ski owner say, hey, yeah, I'm open for business. Mm-hmm. What did you think of that? How do you think your fellow Montanans would react to that?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely was like, like rear back on the back legs, I understood his perspective for sure because we, all ski season, we're like, why is chair 2 down? Oh, and we have a lift, a brand new lift just went in, lots of problems. They ordered it during COVID and all kinds, and it's chair 4. I forget what the actual name of it is because it's now called the Gambler because you gamble whether you're going to get stuck on that lift for hours or you're going to actually get to go ski that day. And then, so, I mean, it's like a joke all over town. So I get that piece of the infrastructure, the lodges and all of that sort of thing. But what I thought was interesting about that, because he said, those would be the pros. But at the same time, he was talking about being a small company. His team has been there since he was a child. He said a lot of them, because his father owned that ski area, right? So some of the ski patrol and the metal shop, the lifties, all of that, a lot of them have been, the maintenance crew have been there for a long time. And he was the one actually that brought up there was a huge strike last summer at one of Vail Corporation's huge ski areas, and all of a sudden, the name of the ski area. Do you know which one I'm talking about?
I believe it was in Utah. I think it was Park City
It was
area.
Park City. That's right. It was Park City. And the ski patrol went on strike because they weren't getting a livable wage. And they were, Vail was flying in, scabs to break the picket line that were coming in from some of their skiers on the East Coast. I mean, it was a big thing. And, for somebody from, Lost Trail, a small family run company, I mean, he said one of his missions is to be able to pay all of his people, his words, as much as I possibly can. I don't think that would ever come out of the Vail Corporation's mouth. I think the opposite is we want to pay every single person the least that we can possibly get away with so that we can make money for our shareholders. And so you get a new lodge and you get some lifts, but then you're really screwing over the people that make your ski hill the amazing experience that it is. And so that really, it just made me sad to hear that, really.
Definitely understand that. I think that's a lot. If you go skiing a lot of places, you'll see a lot of the lifties are actually from South America, or in the case of Canada, for example, I was just up in Banff and skiing those 3 resorts near there, and all their ski workers were from either the UK or Australia or New Zealand. So it's interesting. Yeah, like somewhere like Lost Trail, they want to employ local people. It gets difficult. I'm torn on it. Here's the thing. As my local mountain, of course, I want it to stay local. I want to just run up there. I don't want a lot of thrills. I just want to go and do it and ski with my buddies and not be bothered with a bunch of tourists. However, for Vail, for example, or companies like that, the Icon Pass, they're really opening up opportunities as a traveler. So again, I think Vail just added all these resorts in Austria they just announced to the Epic Pass. So now you can buy a pass, the Icon Pass or the Vail Epic Pass. I think Epic Pass was 900, Icon 1200, something like this. Now you have access to about 40 mountains around the world. This was something Scott Grasser from Lost Trail pointed out. He said, how is that not good for skiing? We're trying to keep skiing going. We have a lot of challenges coming up in that industry. Scott also pretty much denied any impact of climate change going forward. He's like, I'm totally confident. I don't know how true that is, but there is a problem. Skiing is an expensive sport. So unless we make it more affordable to do it, we may see a drop off. And I think one of the things Vail's trying to accomplish is just try to open up those mountains for everyone. Now, are there consequences to that, such as the workers being paid less, the fanfare of it? Yeah. But as a skier, it is nice knowing I can pay $900. Granted, that is a significant investment. But now as a traveler over the winter, I can go to Europe. I can go to ski. They have resorts in Japan now. So I think that's like a cool thing that become of that, where as travelers like you and I are, it really opens the door to inspire us to go places. In the long run, who knows? Yeah, I see both sides of that.
Interesting. You have a much more balanced perspective, but I wanna pull that apart a little bit, um, because we're gonna get back to skiing. But you just brought up a point that I want to talk about, and you're a travel writer, and so you go to these places that are incredible, and you tell other people about them, and from living in a small outdoor recreation community, people are like, don't tell anyone where the fishing hole is. Don't tell anyone where the morel stash is. Don't tell anyone where the best huckleberry patch is, right? Like, people want to keep that on the down low. And here you are going, here's the huckleberries, here's the morels, you know what I mean? So on a larger scale, I want to talk about that because, for example, I just read your article about traveling to Brazil and getting to see this endangered jaguar species. And so the more that you bring this tourism to places like this, the more tourists that come to Brazil to see the jaguars, then the more protected habitat is there. Money is being made off of the tourism industry and the reason there is to protect this jaguar habitat so that the tourists get to see them. And so that offsets the more rapacious financials of doing ranching, where they, clear cut the forest and take away all the habitat. So that's a really beautiful use of tourism to promote that kind of ecosystem to keep it intact. And yet we also see the reverse of that. I live in tourist town, and I can't tell you the building going on here, the destruction of habitat, the deer and the bear and the everything that's being displaced by this massive growth because people want to live in these areas, and because we've had a tourism budget that has gone out and told everyone how amazing this place is, and now it's blowing up. So how do you, as a travel writer, balance your desire to keep these pristine places intact, to bring tourism to the places that will help do that, and to also not be exploitative of the very industry that you love in your heart, but that you're also, part of the machine for lack of a better word?
It's a great question. It's a very complex one. I think about a lot. I guess we can take it bit by bit. You're absolutely right. Tourism can really help in certain parts of the world, at least in the beginning, because a lot of places that need economic help can get that from visitors. We think a lot about Caribbean islands, for example. Great example, an island. There's only so much they can do on that island by themselves, not much industry or what they can do. But now all of a sudden you open a tourism industry and you can make a lot of money. Hawaii, where I'm a tour guide, lived for many years, is a great example. In the beginning, those economics are great. As a government, you can tell your people, hey, we're going to bring visitors here. They're going to come. They have money to spend. Start your businesses, get your tour companies going, prepare to accommodate to them. And it's great. It gives a lot of purpose. And in a lot of places, it opens up this spirit of hospitality. And what is the world if we're not sharing our home with others, right? That's kind of the goal we always talk about in theory, right? Like the world is smaller if we travel, if we all just understood each other's cultures. Well, travel's how we do it. You got to go and see it and live it and meet those people and talk with them. So those initial benefits are great. The problem comes in tourism is that it's really difficult to go backwards. So for example, once I am the governor of Hawaii and I tell everybody, okay, guys, we're really going to launch this industry, it's really difficult to go backwards. You can't then all of a sudden 5 years, 10 years later say, actually, you know what, we're going to reduce the number of visitors. You could, but it's very difficult to do that because now your citizens are going to say, what? I just invested my life savings into this sailboat and you told us this, blah, 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 blah. And you may or may not know this, but most destinations have tourism offices. So we call them DMOs, like destination marketing organizations. Many are in-house, which is to say they're a part of the government, and then they'll outsource to a public relations company that helps bring attention to the destination. They're funded by the visitors. They're funded by taxpayer money often. They're often judged by the old term beds and heads, right? So at the end of every year, did we have more people come than last year? And how much did they spend in the destination? Those are the two metrics. Good luck if you're a public official and you're trying to decrease either of those two, because a good economy has to grow. That's just how we see it right now in our 2025 brains. Like an economy is only functioning if it's growing. And despite, for example, in Hawaii, many calls from local people to decrease tourism, it's very difficult because tourism shareholders don't want to do that, especially when you have corporate companies who come in and run hotels. These companies invest millions, if not hundreds of millions of dollars into the destination, and they're not going to stand for something going backwards. So this is the problem when you let the travel genie out of the bottle, and this is why when you go visit one place, let's say now, and it's very authentic, it's very raw. The Pantanal in Brazil just went. I mean, it is as low key as you can get. It's very genuine. It's just a very authentic place right now because they haven't been doing it that long and not many people have gone and the stakeholders are still building. If we go there 50 years from now, who knows what we'll find? It may be hard to find that Pantanal culture there. It may just be totally, a well-oiled machine. And that's sort of how it goes. Like the more that you iron out your tourism infrastructure, sometimes the more is lost. We also see examples where you may go to, in Africa, it's very common for tour operators to partner with small villages. And so as part of going on a safari, for example, you may stop by a local village, let's say in Kenya, like a Maasai village, and you'll stop there for 1 hour. You'll walk all throughout the village, and you'll get a reality of a view of what it's like to live there for these people. When I first went to Africa in 2014, I remember walking through this village, and it was one of the most moving things I've ever done. First off, you only get one first Africa. It's like a first kiss. You can't, there's some experiences in the world you just can never replicate because the place is so different than you and so different from what you're used to. It's just, you'll never replicate it. So travelers, when you go from somewhere for the first time, really understand you're having your first kiss moment with that place. But that aside, I remember going to this village, and this little kid came up to me and clearly wanted to show me around. So he walked me around. He must have been 10 years old. He showed me the small hut that him and his family live in. I remember it was just one little bed, like kind of cot on the floor, a fire pit. The entire inside of this wood structure was burnt from all the smoke that they have in there. And he walks me around, there's chickens and goats everywhere. He's pointing things out. And this whole time I'm kind of feeling sorry for him. I'm like, man, this is crazy. And then he walks me to the edge of the village, and we look out, and there's a view of Mount Kenya there, off in the distance, the mountains. And we both are looking at it, and he looks up to me and he says, "Look at that." I say, "Yeah." He says, "Do you have anything that beautiful where you're from?" And it just melted me. I was like, wow, this kid feels sorry for me. Like, he's so happy here. Anyway, that's just a little side story. So you go to these places where it's very authentic and beautiful. I haven't been back to that village, but there are examples. Well, now, if you go back 10 years later, because people want to improve themselves, so then it was authentic. Now you go back, maybe they don't live in that little wood shack anymore. Now, maybe the roof is now aluminum. Maybe they've installed some electricity, and now they have a little heater inside. So now once the move, like maybe they're wearing blue jeans now instead of whatever the torn pants they were before, because tourism money is coming in. So tourism money can actually impact culture, and depends on where you're standing. Is that good? That increases the quality of life? Sure. Now the next tourists that come in be like, this village is so inauthentic. Look, they're not, so there's almost this expectation in certain areas of like how we want people to behave. And I'm just bringing this up to show another example of how tourism, you can't go backwards, right? You only have that authenticity for so long. And then as the money gets involved, things naturally change. And it just becomes a new kind of authentic. So regrouping on that, how do I handle that as a travel writer? Well, first off, I'm typically and this is just my personal theories. Other writers do it differently. I'm not of the social media crowd. I have social media as part of my job. It's something we all need to do in 2025, but I'm not the kind of person that's going to go somewhere and record everything on Instagram and then tag it and post it. That's a lot of what happened in Hawaii. I mean, you hear a lot of complaints about that. And I'm using Hawaii as an example over and over again because I just have the experience there. And you'd have all these secret waterfalls or parts of the island that maybe were in the guidebook, but in the old days, you had to read the guidebook. Right? It wasn't easy. It was no big pictures. It wasn't really that fun to read the guidebook. Maybe somebody would tell you. But now with social media, those things can spread, unfortunately, like a wildfire, where these places just get on the map really quick. And then people have expectations like, I want to see that. Like, I want to see that waterfall with that sun shooting into it that time of day. And people get very honed in on what they want to do. And this is why we see floods of people there. I'm not that person. So I'm a writer. I'm a journalist. I'm going into a destination not to pick out points of interest and just push you there. I'm trying to tell a whole story. Now, because of the state of the media, we have times where we have to do like top 5 ski resorts in Chile or something like this, where the internet is forcing us to use a different format. But as much as I can, I'm trying to tell a story. And in the process of telling that story, I'm talking to people and I'm talking to local people. And I think by doing that, you get a pretty good idea of what people want to share with you and what they want to share with the world and what they don't. I think it's the individual journalist's responsibility to feel that out, because some destinations want to share. Some destinations will take you right up to their favorite spots. And that's good. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with sharing a space. But if there's a sensitivity to it, such as in Hawaii now or other destinations where you can tell they're already feeling the effects of over tourism, it's a little bit different story. So I personally use my best judgment on that to where I feel, okay, I'm coming here. What story does the tourism board want to tell? And what story do the local people want to tell? And I try and get at the intersection of those two circles to where I'm writing about something that is responsible, like a safe place to go to. I mean, one of the worst things as a travel writer you can do is encourage someone to go somewhere that's not safe. For example, many people, dozens, have died in certain tide pools in Hawaii, and you'll see them in travel articles as if none of it ever happened, right? And then local people get very upset about this, etc. It's a personal journey, and it's one that you have to reevaluate every day because today, especially, journalistic standards are kind of just dissipating around every corner, especially with social media, and especially with now there's such a focus on the visual component. You know, as a writer, I'm like I'm a skeleton in the closet at this point. Most people are doing more visual things. I don't know if that answers your question. It's complicated, but I try and be very sensitive to that in what I write about. And as an outdoorsman, I have this personal understanding of places that are really important to me. So I live in a tourist town. I'm in Palisade, Colorado. We're Colorado's wine country. We're a huge peach growing area. We're a town of 3,000 people, and we get overrun in the summer. We have many festivals. People come here for wine tasting. They come here for the mountain biking in the mountains. There's places I wouldn't dare write about around here because they're in my backyard. So a lot of times what I do when I'm in other destinations is I'm grateful for people to show me things, and I'm pretty good at making friends. So a lot of times I get a look behind the curtain, but I always try and check with them. Like, okay, like, or at least sometimes you don't even have to ask. I mean, it's pretty obvious. Okay, like, is this a spot we want to send a lot of people? And Montana, where you live, I mean, everything I read about Montana is now the big arguments over fishing spots, about how like rivers and private property and places where people are being sent. It's probably going to get worse as long as the governments refuse to really take any action that combats over tourism, and they refuse to limit places where people can go or how many people are coming. It's just going to keep happening.
Yeah, it's true. I will just say as a side note, PSA, Montana is a horrible place. No one should come here. It's awful in every metric that you could think of. Do not come to Montana. Okay, back to you, Will. I actually, I do want to circle back to something. So you said you'd graduated from journalism school and you were sort of despondent at the state of journalism, that it was, if it bleeds, it leads kind of thing. And so you went into this new direction, which is much more life affirming and joyful. And yet all of these other things that we just talked about have been boiling up over the years too. So how do you still feel the same way? Are you still excited about that? Or do you feel a little bit the way you did when you graduated from school? Like, wow, I wanted to do something in this way, and now the whole industry is going in this other way. Are you still feeling that kind of schism?
I feel a different schism. So back then, my problem was that I dedicated a lot of time to studying how news journalists specifically covered tragedy. So my last day, I graduated from Virginia Tech in 2007. My last day at college was the school shooting on April 16th, 2007. That was literally my last day of college. At that time, I was already accepted to grad school for journalism program. I didn't study it in undergrad. And right away at the start of my grad program, you had to decide, what are you going to write your thesis on? And I had been a reporter. I was interning at a newspaper during that shooting, and I had some experience trying to cover it, I would say. And I was extremely disappointed with a lot of the behavior I saw. In fact, I remember the night of April 16th seeing news coverage that I knew to be wrong because they mentioned people I knew or places that I was familiar with, and the behavior that I saw from journalists over the course of the coming weeks, because the entire national media descended on little Blacksburg, Virginia. I saw a lot of discouraging behavior. People using identity politics. The shooter was an Asian person, so walking up to Asian people on campus. How do you feel being Asian, now here on campus? Or people having prayer circles in the campus parks and journalists trying to drop microphones in. I remember the most disturbing thing was the night of April 16th. The killer had mailed a package to NBC with his manifesto and photos of himself, and the news network aired it. I remember being at the bar that night with everybody else who was trying to medicate and watching this TV where we just saw everything like glorifying this killer, him holding guns to his head, him pointing guns at the screen, all about his manifesto and why he did it. And I was just kind of disgusted and thought, wow, like I thought that the media was supposed to care about the victims. Right now, it just seems like they're exploiting us. They're using our story to get ratings. I mean, they don't really care how we feel about this. They're not thinking, how will it affect the Virginia Tech students if we post a picture of the shooter online or on the nightly news of him pointing a gun at the camera? Nobody thought about that. So I decided that for my grad school thesis, I would study this. And so I used Virginia Tech shooting as a case study. I used 9/11. I used Oklahoma City bombing. I used the Columbine high school shooting. And I looked up old coverage and I just contacted these reporters and interviewed everyone that was involved in it. It was one of the most depressing holes I've ever been in my life. 2 years of just really struggling with cynicism. I remember talking to these journalists who would say that their editors sent them out on a video assignment to talk to people who had been affected by whichever tragedy it was, and that they were told that if they don't have someone crying on camera, just don't even bother.
Hmm.
So these are kind of the orders that the editors are giving. People, I remember talking to one reporter, and he challenged me. He said, and it's a very typical journalistic line that we are taught in school, that people want to tell their story. They just need to be given the opportunity to tell it. So when you go and try and reach out to these victims, you're actually just doing them a great service. And I just said, well, that's interesting. Would you consider at the next tragedy just setting up a table or a booth outside, the police lines, and just because so many people want to tell their story, I'm sure you just have a line at the table, people waiting to be interviewed. And he was kind of like. So I think there's a little bit of a disconnect for journalists. It's so easy to just take yourself out of it and you start covering these things and you start to see it as your story. And just it's a job I got to do. And there's a lot lost there. And some things in the news, it's not that big a deal, but some things are really a big deal and they have a strong effect on people and it's not helpful. This is a problem I have in general with the emergence of 24-hour news. There's so much time to fill. You live in Montana. Do you really need to know right now about a house fire in North Carolina that killed a family and their two children? Maybe. I mean, there's a lesson there. Why did the house burn down? Okay, maybe there's some lesson to be there. But my point is that in today's world, we're overcome with stories of tragedy that we can do nothing about. There's nothing you can do to help those people in North Carolina, really. Back in the day, news was about your community. Local newspapers reported things close to you that you could have an impact on. If you read it and were moved, you could take action against that. But by the time I came into journalism, that was already dying. I mean, the local newspaper I worked for in college is gone. A lot of local newspapers are gone. So now we're just inundated with more national news and it becomes more entertainment. And I will say, I'm not saying that everybody watching the Virginia Tech shooting coverage was like having popcorn, feeling entertained, but to some degree, a lot of the coverage I felt was just more entertainment. It wasn't doing anything to help us. It wasn't doing anything to help the people that died. It was just, you had to fill the air and this was the hot story. So I got really discouraged, and mostly I got discouraged with just sort of the attitude of the reporters. It was very rare that I would meet someone that said, hey, I read back through my articles because I knew I was going to talk to you, and I agree with you. I'm kind of embarrassed, or, yeah, I don't see how that moved things forward. People were very defensive about it. I just couldn't imagine a life like that for myself, and I was confused, and I didn't want to do it. And what brought me into journalism in the first place was just that I love to write and tell stories. I needed to find a way to tell stories that I felt would positively impact people to start and that wouldn't negatively impact me. So that led me into more feature writing to start and trying to just write about things that weren't hard news. So things happening in the community, events, people in the community that had done interesting things, like a features column. And then slowly expanded. I started working at a writing center. I really wanted to help people learn how to write. I think communication in that way is people really struggle with it. People know what they want to say, but they have trouble getting it on paper, blah, blah. So I did that. And then I discovered travel writing. I was living in California and I went to a couple events and met some travel writers. You know, food and wine festivals, for example, are a great place to meet people writing about things other than tragedy and if it bleeds, it leads. And I thought, and I discovered over time that travel writing and writing about the outdoors was something that would combine my desire to report. So I can go, I can do research, I can talk to people, I can use those journalistic skills, but I'm also inspiring people with my writing to do something that may improve their lives or, you know, make them have fun instead of putting them in some kind of depressing mood. And it was more fun for me to do this kind of work. So I don't know what that says about me. Maybe I'm just not up to the chance to like tackle something so big as reporting on the negative society all the time. But that's how I fell in. And I just felt travel writing like as soon as I discovered, I said, oh, this is it. This is the combination of storytelling and reporting and inspiration that will really motivate me and hopefully will positively impact others. Now, as we flash forward to today, as we discussed, yeah, there are concerns with travel writing. If I wrote an article about Barcelona right now, am I doing harm or helping? They're having huge problems with over tourism. So, yeah, as a journalist, I still got to be aware of my actions and how they affect people. And I always think back to my time at Virginia Tech. And when I'm going to write this article, I say, are these people going to benefit from this? Is this just for me because I wanted to go there and do the research and now I just got to produce something? Or am I really doing something that is beneficial for people, that not only is it going to benefit people because they may be inspired to go somewhere that they didn't know about, or they may be inspired to do something based on my tale, but are the people that I'm writing about, you know, do they want this? Are they happy with it? And that's just a total case by case basis that you have to deal with every time.
Wow. Wow, wow, wow. That I mean, gosh,
So
that's was really beautiful and moving, and I want to say for our listeners, I felt a little triggered by that too. Like that's a lot. That's intense. A lot of the stuff that you're talking about is trauma, right? And the trauma that we are subjected to daily when we watch the news or listen to the news, and like you said, things that we can't really affect, and that make it's almost I don't want to say that more traumatic, but it is traumatic to hear all those things and then to have nothing that you can do about it because that's actually one of the definitions of trauma and your trauma responses if you can't take positive action so that you feel like you have some autonomy in a situation, that actually makes it more traumatic and your experience and ability to get beyond that is more difficult. I'm going to add for people if you're feeling really moved right now or a little shaky, put your hand over your forehead like you're taking your temperature and take a deep breath in your nose and exhale out your mouth and help you to stay present because what Will's talking about is some really important and powerful things. And what really all that made me think of, Will, is that I wish every journalist had um, that self knowledge and that ability or even desire to reflect the way that you have so deeply and powerfully about your impact in the world that you make. I didn't know that this was a direction that our talk was going to be taking, but I think it's really valuable and I appreciate you being vulnerable and sharing that because that's that's big. That's some big stuff. So I just want to take a moment and just say thank you for sharing that with us, because that's really some intimate information and time of your life. Yeah, I guess we'll keep you in the vulnerable state because you're there, and you share some really beautiful vulnerabilities in your writing. I want to talk about Antarctica. It is a lovely,
Hmm.
beautiful article. And the whole time I'm reading it, I'm scared. I'm almost holding my forehead like I just told everyone to do, because I'm thinking, please don't be a bad tourist. Please don't be a bad tourist. Please don't be a bad tourist. Please don't do something like, don't color outside the lines. And this comes from somebody who breaks the rules all the time. I'm a big rule breaker. And here I was praying that you wouldn't break the rules, and with you so in your pocket here. I don't know why I just used that word, in your pocket, because this is what you're doing. You're in Antarctica and you're carrying in your pocket the ashes of your father. And so your goal there was to continue your relationship with him and to honor his passing, a decade after he passed, to bring him with you on this journey, because he wasn't a big traveler and he was so proud of you for doing the travel work that you do, and inspired by you is what I took away from that. And you're on in this very pristine environment where you're not even allowed to sit down on the snow. And here you are about to sprinkle ashes. Talk us through what you did or didn't do on that incredible hike.
Going to Antarctica, first off, is just such an incredible experience. It was a place that was on my travel list since the moment I decided I want to become a travel writer. And there's kind of two different mentalities when you're in this business. There are places you want to go just as a traveler because you're curious, and then there's places you dream of being sent as a writer, and then there's kind of a crossover of those two. And Antarctica was in that crosshairs for me because my dad and I just always talked about this so much when I started. Believe it or not, when I started travel writing, I was a freelancer. And like I say, it's kind of a fancy word for being unemployed, especially in the beginning when you're just trying to figure it out. And a lot of people in my life were not so supportive. They were confused about what I was doing. They didn't think it was realistic. And for example, I mean, it wasn't just people that didn't know. When I was in grad school, I remember specifically one of my professors, travel writing came up in class, and he told the entire class, and he in fact had a hand in starting, I believe it was Men's Journal or Men Health, one of the two, but he was a magazine publisher. He told the class that being a travel writer was a pipe dream, that it wasn't a viable career, that it wasn't something you could do. I remember he making some joke, well, otherwise everybody in this class would just become a travel writer. Okay. Well, so those words were echoing in my head when I decided to start this. And then I found that reaction to be very similar from other people in my life. And some of it, I think, stirred from just a not knowing and not understanding. Maybe some of it was a little bit of a jealousy. It's kind of hard for someone who's in a 9 to 5 to maybe understand how someone's just going to travel the world for work or something. So I struggled through those first couple years. It was difficult to make money in the beginning. That was one thing. You have to establish yourself and you're trying to get opportunities and you're trying to get outlets, and it's a hustle. But my dad was always by my side. In fact, he was the person that I would publish an article and I wasn't even sure if it had run in the magazine yet. And he would email me and say, I just read your story in XYZ magazine. It's incredible. Way to go. He would also just be my sounding board. We get what I call travel writer problems in this industry. It's like, oh, in mid-July, like I got two assignments possible. I either have to go to Tokyo or I have to go to London. Like I don't know what to do. I'm so confused. You get into this sort of weird space. So my dad was always my sounding board for those things, and he would always encourage me. In fact, he always encouraged me to take less desirable trips in general because he was above the belief that networking above all else would help me and that travel experience above all else would help me. And even if didn't want to go to Detroit, Michigan because, oh, who does? Well, maybe you'll find something there and maybe you'll hone your skills by going there. All this to say, he was the guy in my corner. He always supported me. And unfortunately, in 2015, he passed away suddenly and unexpectedly. And I was actually in Bosnia. Well, I was in Montenegro. I had taken a day trip to Montenegro from Bosnia when I heard. And it was brutal. It just crushed me. And it really, when you only have one person in your corner for so long and all of a sudden they're gone, it's just, man, a lot of doubt creeps in. Am I going to be able to do this without him? Who is going to fill his role? But I came to see over time that he never left, which I'm sure a lot of your listeners can understand. When you lose someone physically here, one relationship ends, but another begins. And that was true almost immediately for me, where I felt this new connection with my dad. And I knew that I wanted to do something special for him. But when you're in that thing of loss, I had these ashes and I just didn't, I was paralysis by analysis, as they say. I wanted to do something special, but I never knew what to do with them, and so they just sat in my closet. No idea I came up with was ever good enough to honor him. And just the years went by in the way that they did. The pandemic happened, which stopped a lot of travel writing. And we don't have to talk about this, but after the pandemic, I got involved as well in a little side project. I owned a kombucha company here in Western Colorado. I ended up selling that last fall. And just as I was selling that company, and it was kind of the end of a long road for me, I was wanting to get back to doing travel writing full time. That thing had run its course. Just as I was selling that company, I got the opportunity to go to Antarctica. And so I knew that this was a sign that my new phase of life was about to begin, and that, made me think about my dad. I always thought about my dad when I got some monumental trip. And I also thought about him when I got very minor invites. I was like, oh, Dad would want me to go to this or whatever. But when Antarctica came across, I knew it was special. So I brought his ashes down there, and my every intention was to bury my dad in Antarctica and leave him there just as a sign of respect to him. And just to go through that process 10 years later, just to think about him. It's so easy to get caught up in day to day and just not forget, but just just let that distance build a little bit. And I had felt that over the last couple of years, where I felt this distance had come between us a little bit, and I wanted to close that. So I had the opportunity to go on the continent, and I was off on a snowshoe one day, and I had the ashes in my pocket. It was bulging out of the side of my pocket. Luckily, in Antarctica, you wear like 6 layers, so nobody notices when you got bulges in your clothing. But every intention was to find a scenic spot and step away and just have a little ceremony of my own. I came to find out, though, on that snowshoe, that's when I found out you weren't allowed to sit down. You can't put anything on the ground. You couldn't even put your backpack on the ground when you were resting. It was very strict, and it's a little annoying. And as a rule breaker myself at times, I thought, my God, give me a break. Like, we can't sit down. But it's for a reason. Tourism to Antarctica is increasing. I mean, we could talk about this all day just from our previous conversation. You go to Antarctica now, it's one thing. There's only a certain amount of boats going. It's very spread out. It's very controlled. Will that be the same way 15 years from now? I don't know. But I grew to respect those rules, and I thought, man, there's no way that I can do this now. So I don't want to give away the story because I'd like the opportunity for your listeners to read it, but I really struggled with what to do. And ultimately, I didn't end up burying my dad in Antarctica, but I still had like a special moment for him. And it was one of the most powerful stories that I've ever written. And honestly, it was one of the most powerful stories that I've seen people respond to. I initially just wrote it for myself. I wanted to kick off this, coming back to travel writing after being distracted for a couple years. I still did travel writing, but just a lot less. And the responses I got from people when I published it on my website was just overwhelming. People who it resonated with, other people that had lost people and struggled what to do with the ashes, people that have struggled with that exact thing of wanting to bury their loved one, for example, in like a national park or something and going through that process. And then others who just couldn't relate, but just felt it was moving. So I write for CNN Travel as one of my outlets, and I I pitched it to them, and they ended up publishing it as well, a different version slightly, but it was just such a great thing that really just makes me smile all the way around. I mean, Antarctica was an incredible place. I accomplished my goal, which was to just live a little bit closer to my dad and restart that relationship and to share that with others. And that kind of signaled to me that, okay, like everything you just did with this company, you're moving in the right direction. Your dad is with you here again, you know, your co-pilot, so to speak. And here we go. Like let's get back to it. Let's start telling these stories again. Let's try and find some humanity in this world again. Let's
Mm,
share things about places. And it was such a just a momental thing for me just back
mm,
in December.
mm. That's so beautiful. We'll definitely put a link to that in the show notes here. It really is a beautiful piece, as so many of your pieces are. And, I want to say this back to that, that the kind of that schism between travel writing. Are you exploiting or are you introducing and, bringing the world closer together? What I really like about your pieces and your choices of where to go is they're off the beaten path. I mean, again, going to see the Jaguars, you're like, it is not easy to get to. And you take us to a ski area in Austria. And I'm reading that article. I'm like, I want to go there. That sounds amazing. And then at the end, you talk about how you get there. It's like, oh, that's not going to be easy to get to. It's like you're advertising, for lack of a better word, places where they probably could. The travel industry isn't over exploited there, and it would be actually beneficial to the people to bring more people there. So I really like that those are the choices of the kind of places that you like and that you like to write about. And so maybe as we're kind of wrapping up, let's come back to Portillo again. We're in this cruise ship in the Andes. There's 450 people there. And what is your travel angle for there? I mean, clearly it's a very well-known resort. Um, a lot of race teams go there and practice every year. And they are not going to grow. They are what they are. And actually, I have to say, as a tourist there, I'll be both a worker and a tourist because I'm going to go there and teach. But I'm really grateful for that there are these limits, because this idea that it's not beneficial unless it's growing in terms of all these economies, I just think is the absolute wrong way to be looking at anything. The only thing that grows without check is cancer. And we know that that is not a beneficial thing. And so we're doing that with all of our industries, completely exploiting every area of the planet to the point of we know where we're at right now, right? And we can see if we keep going in that trajectory, what the end game is going to be. And then you get to an area like Portillo. They're not going to grow. They are who they are. And they are amazing. It was one of the most amazing weeks I've ever had. I'm so looking forward to going there again. And I want to get your take on it. What would your hook be of sharing a place like Portillo with with your listeners and the travel community at large?
My hook would be something similar to what I said earlier, where it is, without question, a unique place in the ski industry. I personally, I'm not saying there's not one in the world, but I'm not aware of any other place in the world that you go to where you're that remote, as you mentioned, big road you got to go up, not a lot of day traffic, not a lot of, really no one there that's not there for the skiing. You know, there's not like big families there where half the people don't ski. It's mostly people there for skiing. And you have this setup that's unlike anywhere else where you're on a cruise ship on a mountain. And I don't say cruise ship as in there's a casino and all this stuff. It's just you're kind of quarantined there and you gonna mix and mingle with all kinds of people that have come there for the skiing specifically. So I would say first, Portillo is a great option just because it's a unique place and there's not a lot of places like it. So if you are going to travel from North America all the way to South America to ski, you might as well pick a place that has a atmosphere you cannot get in North America or somewhere else closer to you. Why would you want to travel halfway across the world to do something that's very similar to where you live. So that would be, for example, the first thing I would say. The second thing I would say is that for me, it was awesome to go skiing during the summer months here and the winter months in South America. That's unique. If you go to any other destination skiing you're going to that's hot right now would be, oh my God, everyone in Colorado, I don't know about Montana, is going to Japan. Japan, 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 Japan. All my Colorado friends are traveling there.
Same, same, same.
That's a traditional winter trip. I just went to Austria, Europe. Love Austria for skiing. Would recommend it with all my life. Austria is beautiful, Western Austria. But it's a winter trip, just like in North America. Banff, Canada, world-class wilderness. Beautiful winter trip. So South America is unique in that you're going during an off season. Now, can you personally get in the skiing state of mind? That's up to you. But I think that's cool to go at a time when you're not missing out on your local ski season and it's just a different vibe. You're kind of taking yourself out of your normal routine, which for me is a big goal of travel. 3, just some advice. Ski travel is so unpredictable. We can plan to go a ski trip just a state over. When I went up to Montana, I don't know what the snow is going to be like. I'm booking my trip several months in advance, maybe a year in advance if I'm a family or if I have a 9 to 5. Some ski bums have the luxury, like surfers, of just chasing the swells, chasing the storms. Most people can't do that. They're booking way far in advance. I say all that to say, forget any expectation of snow that you may have. And that's why going somewhere that you've never been in another country, I find is a cool thing for a ski platform, because if I travel, say, out to Tahoe and there's no snow, I'm still in my own country. The snow's not good. I could have been at my house in Colorado skiing because Colorado just got a storm. My advice is to get away from all your normal areas. That's why when you go in the summer, you're getting snow. Even if it's little snow, there's no snow in Colorado. I wouldn't have, one of the worst parts of ski travel for me has been like, I'll go to Austria and then I'll check the weather and it's like, oh great, I'm in Austria. The snow's not that good today and we just got a foot back home. What am I doing? Why did I just spend all this money to come here, right? So going somewhere in South America where there is no snow during the American summer, that's just perfect for me. So that really helps with the expectation setting because you're not comparing it to anywhere else that you may live or anywhere else you could have gone, because it's really, that's, so I love that about it. And you should always go on these trips with a spring skiing mentality where you're just going to enjoy the vibe, enjoy the slopes. If you get great snow, awesome. If you don't, you're there to just take some laps, soak it in. We're in Chile. We can meet people from all over the world who are here. We can drink the Chilean wine. We can come take a yoga class with you. And we're there for more of the experience than to, oh my God, I got to rip 2 feet powder, or I'm just, I have a lot of friends that do that. They go to Japan or they go to Europe and they come back and they ask how the trip was. And they're like, the snow sucked or this or that. And that's just not the right mentality, especially if you go to Japan for skiing. It should be amazing no matter what, even if there's no snow, because you're going to a new culture. So when going on ski travel, even though it seems like a single platform trip, open it up so that you have other things you're looking forward to, other things culturally you're looking to learn. One of the funny things is that sometimes the ski culture is so different. For example, I'm a Colorado, downhill kind of bro. The less turns, the better. Let's just rip. Let's go in the trees. Let's cruise. Let's freestyle it. Free skiing. In Austria, if they want to show you they're a good skier, they'll stay on the piste and do as many turns as they possibly can. Like, to them, that's like the awesome skiing. So for me and an Austrian to ski next to each other is hilarious. It's like having 2 different types of music play side by side. We're doing the same thing. We're both making music, but totally different approaches. And I think that's really cool with going international as well. And at Portillo, it's amazing because, as you pointed out, all these ski racing teams and professionals go there because, generally speaking, it is very good snow conditions. So you're just going to learn a lot. You're just going to observe a lot. So just go looking to have fun and go saying, like, so much of travel today now, too, we're distracted. we go to a place, there's too many options. We can't really hone in on what we want to do. It's just overwhelming. You go to a place like London or New York, it's like, wow, where do I even start? For me, it's very nice to go to a destination where I'm here at this hotel. I'm going to step out that door and ski those mountains. My world is small. And because of the atmosphere they've created, I'm going to start to just feel like I'm just kind of here with some friends living, and it's not overwhelming. So that's my take on Portillo. I say go. And I hopefully you're encouraging some listeners to come join you down there, because to be able to go when you're there would be awesome.
Oh, yeah. Oh, for sure. I'm absolutely encouraging. And I love everything that you've said about that. I've started to practice a little Spanish because I always like to be able to speak a little bit of the language where I'm going. And so absolutely. And to your point, you and I met in Portillo all those years ago, and here we are circled back, and we're now back in each other's orbits. And I, for one, am not going to let you out of my orbit again, certainly not for that long time. I wonder if, just as we're wrapping up, without giving anything too much away, can you give us a little teaser of like maybe one or two places that you're going to coming up even in the next year or so?
Whew. Well, of course I can. It would just be picking which ones to tell you about, because luckily for me, I'm back on the road full time. So I'm traveling pretty much 2 to 3 months a week. 2 to 3 months a week. Wow. Will, are you
That's a
tired?
lot
You
of
need a
travel.
coffee. 2 to 3 weeks a month. And I just went through a very, very big schedule. So I had Antarctica in December. I had Mexico and Hawaii in January. I went to the Caribbean in February, and then to St. Pete, Florida, which you read that. March was to Austria and Brazil. Then I was in Banff in April. So it's been very busy. Upcoming, I am actually in 2 weeks. I'm going to go down to New Mexico. So I'll be checking out some national parks in New Mexico and some areas, outdoor areas around Santa Fe and Albuquerque. After that, I'm headed up to Mount Rushmore, a place
Wow.
that I have driven past once but never made the time to stop. And I'm just going to poke around. There's a lot of outdoors out there, and it's become a really popular road trip spot. As you know, national parks have just boomed in popularity since the pandemic. So I'll be going there. In July, I'm going to Hawaii. I also lead tours. So I'm a tour guide in Hawaii, and I lead multi-island tours. So I have two tours back to back in July and early August where I will be leading groups. Usually, I believe they're both 4 island tours. I love tour guiding. It's the greatest compliment to travel writing. When you're a travel writer, it's very rare you get feedback on your articles, maybe a like here or there, but typically the feedback you get is from someone that disagrees with you, who wants to tell you like, "Oh, I can't believe you think that brewery's good. Actually, this one's better," whatever. Okay, buddy, sorry. So being a guide is such a gift, in my opinion, because you're a teacher, it's one thing to talk about travel when I'm writing, but to now be there with them and to share with them not only my knowledge on the ground, but to provide an example of how one should travel and how one should conduct themselves. We get a lot of visitors to Hawaii who come with a skewed mentality of what the destination is and what it offers and how they want to interact with it. And it's a pleasure just to be able to show people how to investigate places a little more and just how to conduct yourself, because travel's hard. You're going to get tired, you get hungry, you get cranky, and to be able to be there with people when they go through all that is a blessing. So that said, that takes me to mid-August, and I haven't scheduled anything for the end of August. In early September, I will be going on a trip in the Tetons, the Teton Ridge Trail. I'll be doing a little backpacking trip. One of my gigs also is I'm the tent editor for Outside Magazine. So I test a lot of outdoor gear, specifically tents. So that will be a testing trip for me. And then in October, I'll be going back to Mexico for a conference. Anyway, I digress. There's a lot of cool stuff coming up for me. I don't know if any of that specifically interests you, but I always encourage people, you got to figure out what you want. People always ask me, where's the best place you've ever been? Or where should I go next summer? And it's an honest question, and it's a good one to start a conversation at happy hour, which is fine. But how could I compare an experience in Hawaii to Quebec? You know, I don't go to Hawaii to ski. I don't go to Quebec to sit on the beach, right? So each place is so different. So people really have to think about, like, what do they want to do? For me, I love seeing natural areas of the world. I go to cities. I was just in New York City this past weekend. It's great. Like, I like it. It's fun, but I'm drawn to outdoor places, as you can see from a lot of the places I mentioned. So it's often unfair to do this to ourselves, where you just sort of look at, for example, the New York Times, 50 places to go or something like this. These are helpful for brainstorming, but what do you want to do with your trip? What do you want to discover? Do you want to discover outdoors and space and the power of this earth? Do you want to discover the creativity of modern America in the heart of New York City or London? Do you want to discover history and go through castles in Europe? Do you want to have that first kiss experience, going to somewhere totally different? India, Africa, Southeast Asia. These are all different platforms to travel on. You also have to ask yourself, are you a traveler or are you a vacationer? I'm a traveler. I like going places where it might get uncomfortable. I I don't know if I'm going to like it, and that's fine. If I don't like it, that's just as much an experience as if I like it. And I'm happy with that, and that teaches me something. A vacationer doesn't want that. My mother's a vacationer. She doesn't want to go and be uncomfortable somewhere. The guy that works 70-hour work weeks, he doesn't want to go somewhere and be uncomfortable. He's got 1 week of vacation with his family, and he wants to nail it. This is why all-inclusive resorts exist. This is why resorts in general exist. People want a reliable place to go. They know they're not going to get sick, etc. So ask yourself, are you a traveler or are you a vacationer? There's no wrong answer. What do you want to do? You can be a traveler this trip and a vacationer next trip, or vice versa. You can do what you want, but decide where you want to go based on what experience you want to have and what your personal interests are. For me to just tell you, like, oh yeah, definitely go to Dublin. Okay, maybe that's, that's easy for me to say, but you got to look inside you. And a lot of work you do is similar. I just heard your interview with, sorry, I'm forgetting his name and I'm a writer and it's bad, but the way that Dan Milliman, the way of the peaceful warrior, I think he said in that, it's like all these are, a lot of the self-improvement are methods, and they're not right for everyone. One thing can be perfect for someone and not for someone else. Travel is the exact same way. I would never take my mother somewhere without running water. She would hate it, but it's what I love to do, right? So you just gotta, don't overthink it too, is what I say. You're gonna, if you have the right attitude and you have the interests, no matter where you go, you're gonna love it. It's a lot up here of your mentality.
I love it. I love it. Will, what a fun conversation this has been. I'm looking forward to reading about all of these new and exciting places that you're going to. And I hope that you come back on the podcast sometime again, because my list of questions has not gotten shorter. Actually, it's gotten longer. And I just feel like there's so much good stuff that we could talk about. It's really bringing me right back to Portillo when we would sit around that dinner table for a really long time after all the plates were cleared and keep talking and talking and talking. It feels just like that again. So it's been a pleasure to sit with you here, and I appreciate you taking the time, and good luck on all of your travels and with all your writing. And we'll put in the notes how everyone can get in touch with you, because your work is really powerful and it's good. It is good, good stuff. And so I really want our community to tap into that and be able to follow you wherever you go around the world. So thank you, Will.
Thank you for saying that. And if I may, just to add one thing, I think what you said there is so important and it really strikes a chord with me. You say now you have more questions than you started with. I think that is a sign of a curious mind. And I always tell people in travel the same thing. The world gets bigger the more you travel, not smaller, because you go to Germany once, to Berlin, and a lot of people say, we've done Germany. I hear that all the time. We've done XYZ. And it's no, your curiosity knob needs to be turned up. You went to Berlin. What about Hamburg and Munich and Dusseldorf and Dresden? Like, all these places are so different. So I commend you for that. A curious mind always ends up with more questions. I'd love to have you on the Wake and Wander podcast sometime. I'm not as tech as you. I only record in person because, like I said, I'm a newspaper guy, so I'm behind time. But next time we cross paths, I'll have you on. It would be great to learn more about what you're doing. Thank you for having me, and thank you for listening to the stories. We laughed, we cried. It
We
was great.
did. We did it all. We did it all. Thank you so much, Will. And we'll talk to you really soon, I hope.
Thank you so much, Lauren.